Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna turn it over to you. Right?
Okay.
Let's call the council meeting to order. It's 3:00. And at this time, I'm turning it over to our administrator to get started.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on the agenda is second and final reading of an ordinance to approve the renewal of the electric and gas franchise agreement with Dominion Energy of South Carolina.
Mr. Mayor, I think we can do 2 and 3 together. Is that?
Okay. I'll go ahead and- I'll
I'd
read them.
like to make a motion that we give second and final reading to both the Berkeley Electric Cooperative Franchise Agreement and the Dominion Energy Franchise Agreement at the 5% rate.
Okay, we got a motion and to do 2 and 3 with second amendment. Dominion and Berkeley Electric.
I will second the motion for the purposes of discussion.
You second the motion, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I know that last month when this came up for first reading, I was supportive, obviously, of entering new franchise agreements with Dominion Energy and Berkeley Electric Co-op, but had made a motion at that time to amend to reduce the amount of franchise fees from 5% down to the 3% that they were before 2012. And my motion didn't get a second. And for that reason, I think reducing it to 3% is probably off the table procedurally. But I do believe very strongly that the increase from 3% to 5% was intended, even though I voted against it, Councilman Brown voted against it, Councilman Jackson voted against it. The intent of moving from 3 to 5% was well intended. It was intended to build some roads. And what we found out about is that increase from 3% to 5% just doesn't build anything. The cost of road construction over the last 10, 20 years has skyrocketed so much that you're not able to really accomplish anything. And for that reason, and that was the reason why I did make that motion. So a reduction to 3% is procedurally dead. But at this point, I would move to amend both franchise agreements to reduce the 5% fee or tax down to 4%.
Mr. McIntosh, I will second that primarily for discussion purposes. But the reduction of taxes.
Before we discuss that, we got a motion on the floor to reduce that to reduce both of them to 4% and a second. Now we can discuss it.
Well, it's, I'm sure taxpayers appreciate reduction in taxes, but right now the town's in sort of a position where we're trying to do some things with the growth of the town. And I'm afraid the reduction might not work the way we think it would work. It might be adverse against some of the things we are trying to do right now. Like, for instance, we're trying to take care of our police department, which is one of our biggest divisions. And we're trying to get them satisfied over there in the new Dominion property, with the force that they've got. We've got a lot of work to do. And primarily because of that reason, I'll give you the second on it for, like I said, but I just think we need to hold it to where we've got it at 5%.
And if I may be heard, Councilman Brown, I understand your position. I would say that, we survive quite well as a town with 3% franchise fees for decades. And as I said, even though you and I and Councilman Jackson voted against the increase to 5%, they were earmarked funds that really haven't been able to accomplish much because no fault of our taxpayers or their ratepayers or any of us, but just the cost of road construction is just exorbitant. It's outrageous, really. And you know, from 1847, when the town was founded until about 2012, 2013, the town never built a road. We started building roads in the last 10 years. We own some, we maintain some, but the reality is that the town of Somerville needs to get out of the road building business. We'll go bankrupt if we stay in the road building business. If you look at it this way, you know, everybody that lives in the state of South Carolina lives in a county. And that county government is the basic form of local government. You can't not live in the county. You can't not have a county government that provides some very basic services like public safety, public health, roads. What we have in Somerville is essentially a voluntary association of folks that have decided to join the town of Somerville for some very specific reasons. And increased and enhanced public safety, particularly fire protection. Our Chief Waring will tell you, our Somerville Fire Department is older than the county of Dorchester by about 4 or 5 years. So folks formed this town for some very specific reasons, public safety, a tree ordinance, and eventually a historic district designation. But we didn't form the town to get in the road building business, and we need to get out of it. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. So if we had, the last time we voted this, when we went from 3 to 5% and we earmarked what, the extra 2% or the whole 5% towards roads?
It was just
Okay.
the two.
And so regardless if we pass this or not today, if we are passing it, would that in extra 2% or 1% still go to roads?
I think we're committed to the 2%. I think we back some bonds with the 2%. So if this were to pass, the franchise fee would be 4%, but 2% would be continually be committed. But over time, that would go away. And over time, hopefully, the town will get out of the road building business and let the state and the county and the federal governments build roads.
From what I understand, I wasn't here, won't be here when it's paid off, but there is a bond. From what I understand, the reason why it was raised from 3 to 5 was to pay off that bond. And I would rather see us leave it like it is until the bond's paid off. And at that time, whoever's on council and the mayor can bring it back up and talk about it then about reducing it. But since it was put on there to pay that bond off, I would rather see us leave it like it is at 5% until the bond is paid off. And then we don't have to worry about hard times hitting us and we'd be in a jam. That's my idea, because that's why it was put on. That's why council voted to put the 2% on. So I would like to see us leave it at 5% until that bond's paid off. And then y'all can, whoever's here can take a look at it then.
Mr. Mayor, a couple of comments if I could. I'm certainly not disagreeing with Mr. McIntosh over whether or not we ought to be in the road building business or not. I think it's been problematical at best. But the facts are we did build a road and we are building a road. And the facts are we've got a bond of which we owe $1.25 million a year, if I think for the next 12 years that we've got to pay off. And so the funds are being used for what we said they were going to be used for, and that is for the building of a road. If it doesn't stay at 5%, the budget is not going to be in balance for another thing. So I'm not sure how we rectify that. And we're going to have to find monies, whether it's the 2% for this or 2% for that, or 3, and if it's 3 and 2, we're fine. But you're going to have to find $650,000 somewhere else to balance the budget, that I have no idea where that's coming from. So my belief is that we need to stay at 5%, and when the bond's paid off, we can review where we are.
And I'd just like to say I did vote against it the first time, but it's in place. And we need to pay that bond off. And the town is in a total different place than it was. We need a lot of things. This council, and I've been part of it for a long time, has been ultra conservative and kicked the can down the road for one reason or another. At least since 2007. And before that, if the roads were clean, people were pretty happy. That was all anybody cared about. But now we have a police force and a fire department headquarters together and nobody fits. We have a court that's stuck up in a building here with other workers. And that's not working well either. Personally, Bill and I question whether we ought to have a court, but we have one. And like this bond, we have it. We need it to pay off. And there's a lot of things the citizens of this town would like to see done. And therefore, I think since it's done, we need to keep it till we're finished. But so I agree with.
And I would just say that, of course, we have to have a balanced budget. And while this would mean $650,000 less in revenues, because of course, we're going to pay off the bond with the other 2%. We've run significant budget surpluses in the past, and I believe we're well on the way to running another significant surplus this year, because we've finally gotten back to fiscal responsibility in town, where our revenue projections are conservative and our businesses are thriving. And I would expect that we'll run a surplus of well in excess of $650,000 this year. And it's kind of a back to the future, a return to the good old days in that regard.
Yeah, but I think that amount of money isn't even a drop in the bucket of what we need to spend to bring this town up to a modern police and fire team facilities. That won't even pay for the concept design.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, first of all, I want to apologize to my colleagues for being a few minutes late. I had this on my calendar at 3:15, so I deeply apologize for that and apologize to each of you as well. But since I'm joining in on this conversation, I hear from our constituents that there are a lot of needs still in the community that we're not meeting currently. Pedestrian connectivity, making our streets safer for bicyclists. A lot of these things in a community where the average age is 36 and a half is very important. And I don't think we have a good enough grasp on our obligations. To Councilman Jackson's point, we have a great deal of obligations that I don't think we're taking care of, from capital expenditures to maintaining our buildings. I use the Cuthbert Community Center as an example of one of the buildings we neglected to the point we had to just raise it, completely remove it. And that's sad to me for the town of Somerville. So until we have our hands on our obligations, understand our expenses, and then prioritize our spending where our needs are, I don't think we should reduce our revenue at all, especially understanding that our budget was balanced by federal funds last year. So that is why I'm not in favor of reducing it.
And not only was it balanced with federal funds, we made no capital purchases last year, no police cars, no fire trucks, nothing. So this year, we need to spend double, because last year we didn't have money to buy a police car. So I don't know where the large surplus of money was, but we should have spent it.
There, one other thing I'd like to ask Ms. Moore a question. I'm not quite sure. One other thing I forgot to mention. I believe Dominion pays us forward. And so my belief is if they pay us forward and we were to reduce the rate, guess who we owe a check to? And I don't know where that money's coming from either. So this, you know, these numbers just don't add up if we move off of 5%.
Okay, I'm gonna call for the question. I think we discussed it enough. We voting on the amendment, right, Bill?
On the amendment.
Okay, we voting on Bill's amendment. So all in favor of this amendment, raise your hand, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise.
Aye.
Okay, it's voted down. Okay, now we'll go and vote on Mr. Jenkins's motion. All in favor of leaving it at 5%.
Well, I think the motion
All-
is to approve the agreement.
Yeah, all in favor of approving it. Signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. The ayes carry. Okay, Lisa.
Next, Mayor, is second and final reading of an ordinance to adopt a redistricting plan for council single member districts in the town of Somerville.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend, I ask that we approve the second and final reading of an ordinance to adopt a redistricting plan for council single member districts in the town of Somerville. The plan offered by the NAACP.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded that we adopt the single member district plan for council member districts for the town of Somerville. Any discussion? Not all in favor, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye. No opposed likewise. Ayes carry.
Mr. Mayor, may I be heard for a second on our previous vote, just to say something about my vote?
Bill, I didn't understand you.
May I be heard on, may I explain my vote or speak on our vote on redistricting?
Yes, sir.
I just want to point out, first of all, I want to congratulate this council and just kind of point out something that is pretty rare. At first reading, many of you know Deacon Eddie Bynes spoke to us after at the meeting at first reading, and he came up and talked to me a little bit afterwards. For a town like Somerville, with our demographics, with our size, with our growth, for us, to handle the very political matter of redistricting, and to handle it in a way where we worked really arm in arm with the NAACP, who normally has to go around and sue municipalities and counties for passing single member redistricting plans that disenfranchise voters. But we did just the opposite. And we should give ourselves a pat on the back for doing so. We have absolutely no chance of being sued for disenfranchising minority voters because of the approach that we took.
Good. Thank you, Bill. That's right. We didn't have any problems.
All right, Mr. Mayor, next is discussion and consideration of first reading of an ordinance to modify the sublease with Dorchester County for 312 North Laurel Street, known as the Faith Sellers Senior Citizen Center.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council remove from the table the matter of consideration of potential renewal of lease for the senior center.
Second.
I'll third it.
Second.
Yes.
We have to have a second.
You
Got
have
one.
one.
Second, okay.
Yeah, third too.
I just couldn't talk fast enough. It doesn't happen to me much.
Okay, any discussion on removing it from the table?
Mr. Mayor, I have an affinity for seniors because I'm a senior myself. And when I look around this council, I see some other seniors. But I think this is something that we will do what we can to help the seniors, but I think we're gonna have to give it some time and some thought. And I understand that there's a representative here, the financial director for I met her when I was coming in. And it's not that we're going to ignore you, madam. It's just that we'll give you an opportunity to speak for the senior center at the time that we put this up for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I would just say this, we're in a situation now where we do only have 3 years left on our lease to the county. And I believe the private nonprofit corporation that runs the senior center then subleases it from the county. I believe that's correct. And while there are only 3 years left on the lease, the county has an option, has, I believe, 5-year options. So they can essentially continue to rent from us or lease from us for 28 years and sublease it to whomever they would like to. And at this time, I kind of join with Councilman Brown. I would, even though the current situation would allow the county and whomever to have a senior center there for up to 28 years, and this proposed lease would be a flat lease for 20, I believe. I think that I'm going to need some more time before I can support a flat 20-year lease, knowing that there's a flat 20-year sublease in place. I think we have to be careful stewards of our property and at the same time give our tenants and subtenants the confidence that they're not about to get booted out before they put any money into the building, but they have that confidence. The county can execute after this lease would otherwise expire in 3 years. They can execute up to 5-year extensions, and I'm personally just very comfortable with the current situation.
I think if we sign a new lease, the old lease is gone.
Correct.
So we're not buying in for 28 years anymore. And I would think that for them to spend the money and get a loan or whatever, they need to have something that says we will have it for 20 years, which theoretically is 8 years less than what they have it now. So and moving forward, I don't see a big problem with it.
We need to vote on taking it off the table.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we've got a motion and
We
a
already
second.
did that.
I thought we did.
All in favor of taking it off the table, signify by raising right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise, the ayes carry.
Now, do we have to
Now,
restate
you
it?
need a motion to,
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I move give first reading to the ordinance amending section 2B, term and delivery of premises of the current lease for the senior center, Dorchester County, so that will now terminate on August the 20th, 2042.
I'll second.
okay, now we got a motion on the floor and a second. Now we discuss it. So y'all go ahead with your discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question that may be for Corporation Counsel. If our concern, we obviously understand that the senior center provides a very valuable service within our community that both benefits the town citizens and the county citizens. If there is a way to write into the lease that if it changes hands, if the entity changes hands, the lease is terminated, then we could have confidence moving forward with this lease, the 2042, with that clause. Is that something that's easily written in?
Yeah.
Does that require an amendment, or does the motion cover it, or can we add it through discussion?
You could add it to discussion, and it may already be in there. I know that we had drafted up a proposed lease with that provision in there with a reverter. That if it ceases to operate as a senior center, it would revert back to the town. That can be done at the same time we amend the termination date.
Thank you, sir. I just feel like that would give the confidence to the senior center and also to Councilman McIntosh's point of being concerned about the lease being able to be subbed.
Well, it partially might address my concern. I think, to give a little bit of a history, the nonprofit corporation at one point requested that we give the center to them, and we declined. And then it requested that we lease directly. I think the county wanted this too, that we lease directly to the nonprofit corporation and we did not decline. So now, if I'm understanding correctly, the county has entered into a 20-year sublease with this one entity and is asking us to tear up the existing lease that does have some protections for both parties, both the county and the town in it, and enter a 20-year lease with the county, knowing that this 20-year sublease is in place. And that's where my discomfort is. And I understand that in order for any tenant to put significant resources into improving the premises, upfitting in any way, they need some security that they're going to be there. And certainly a lender would want that security. So I understand that. I'm just, my comfort level is much greater with the existing lease than a 20-year commitment that, in all practicality, even though it's a lease to the county, it's a 20-year commitment to a private corporation.
Wait, yes, sir.
If I might, actually Dorchester County does not have a sublease with senior center. They have a management agreement. And it should be a management agreement for a senior center. So, my thinking is that if for some reason, senior center said, we want to turn it into a daycare center, then it would be over with the county. It's going to be a senior center. It's not going to be anything.
Yeah, I'm willing to give it first reading. I have some other concerns. And I know this, I think there's some people on the dais that will know what this is about and others that won't. And I'm not looking necessarily to go beyond that. I will give it first reading. I will vote for first reading. I will not vote for second reading. And this is going to seem completely unrelated, but I'm not going to vote for second reading until the intergovernment agreement between the county and town for the Midland Drive road reconstruction is done. There's been at least one person that's not on this dais that has tried to tie those two together, saying that that IGA won't be agreed to until we agree to this lease. And I think that's highly inappropriate. So I'll give it first reading. I'll vote for first reading to move it down in the process, but tying two completely unrelated things together is just not appropriate.
Yeah, and I've got to double agree with you on that. And I actually intended to vote against this because of that person bullying a vote. And
The proper word is extortion, but yeah.
okay, yep. And
I think that they've done a good job over there, the senior citizens. And, I think Terry's motion is a good motion. Don't mind Bill studying between now and the second reading to make sure, get PW to look into it. I don't think the county would have a problem with that at all. I think to go to the 20 years is fine. If nobody else has got a problem, no more discussion, I'll call for the vote. So all in favor, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise, the ayes carry.
All right.
Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, signify